So good morning, everybody. Good to see you. My name's Peter Russell from Oxlap. I'm the innovation advisor for Oxlap, which has been involved in sort of bringing these sessions to you. So I'll be your chair today. Some of you will be pleased to hear that I'll not be saying a lot, hopefully. So we've got some real experts in the session today, which is fantastic, and I'll introduce those in a minute. Just a little bit of protocol. It might be good. We're expecting something like 30 odd people to join. It would be useful if you keep your microphone switched off. If you want to keep your camera switched on, that's entirely up to you, or switch your cameras off for the moment and put the cameras back on when we get to the open Q&A session. But microphones off in general would be appreciated. So please, you hopefully can find your way around to show the chat, which I think Teams calls conversation. So there's already a bit of information in the conversation section, which has been posted by our main speaker today, Robert Wilkinson from Oxford Product Design. I'll let Robert tell us what that's about in a minute. So don't click that too early and disappear off and look at it. Please do concentrate on the session. So the session today is has quite a long title, but it's basically the first session in a series of 5, including this one, that we're bringing to you through Oxlap. Which is about taking an idea from conception all the way through to somewhere near the market. Now, I'm really enthused and happy to be able to bring this to you, this mini series of webinars, if you like, because in the past a lot of what we've done has been one-offs, and sometimes the link between different sections and sessions is not quite so clear. So to be able to sort of take you on a journey over the next few weeks and through a number of processes which we recommend you pay attention to, and thoughts and ideas and things to consider that we recommend to you based on our experience, and particularly that of Oxford Product Design, then I think that's a real new thing for us, and hopefully you're going to really benefit from that if you're able to join us for most, if not all, of the sessions. So today's session is about setting the context really for this mini series of design to commercialization webinars. Now, I wanted to work with some people that had much more experience in this area than me. And Oxford Product Design is somebody that I've worked indirectly with over a number of years. I've seen the work that they've done, and I've been really impressed with the way that they work with clients, particularly at the front end, to make sure that ideas are properly worked through before the entrepreneur takes too much time and spends too much of their money, frankly. And I've also been really impressed with some of the successful products and services which have found their way to the market. Now, they are going to talk about a very design-led approach, but that fits with what we want you to think about, and putting the customer first in that process is a key thing. So what we'll find out today is a little bit more about some tools and things which Oxford Product Design would be able to offer you, and the approach that we're going to take to the seminars. A little bit of background is that when I just started discussing this with Robert's colleagues, we were talking about a very sort of light touch, let's present a load of case studies, let's make it quite an engaging and a discursive sort of event, a series of events. We still want to do that. We still will bring you case studies, but I have to say Oxford Product Design have moved this idea forward and actually have come up with workbooks and a toolkit, which hopefully is going to be made available to you if you're some way on this journey. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Robert. And I just wanted to quickly point out that Robert has had to step in at fairly short notice because of a key colleague is rather unwell. So much appreciate that, Rupert. We we're going to take around about 40 minutes, 45 minutes to go through the main session. We'll have a Q&A. Please use the chat box if you want to post any questions. I'll keep a monitor on that, and I'll try and bring that to Rupert's attention if I think it'll help with the session as we go along. For the moment, probably cameras off, microphones off, and I'll invite you to switch those things back on later on in the session. So, Rupert, is that okay by way of introduction?
That's fantastic, Peter. I couldn't have hoped for more. Thank you. Thanks very much.
I'll switch off my camera so not to distract people, but over to you.
Okay. Well, I might just bring up the slideshow, which I'm going to be stepping through today, just to make sure that we can get that technical hurdle out of the way. So hopefully you guys can see
that. It's appearing on my screen, so I think it's probably appearing on everybody's.
Right. I love it when something works. Okay, so, well, firstly, thank you on behalf of everyone here at OPD to OPSLEP and for everyone who signed up for the webinar today. It's OPD's pleasure to share some of our experience with you and this toolkit, and hopefully it can really help you. It certainly really has helped us and our clients in the past. So yeah, unfortunately, Steve Green, our head of design, was supposed to be running today's session, but he sent his apologies. I know he was really looking forward to running this session himself, but I've had to step in a little bit at the last minute here, so bear with me a little bit. So yeah, I'm Rupert Wilkinson. I'm co-founder, managing director of Oxford Product Design. We founded Oxford Product Design back in 2013, but I had been involved with and run consultancies prior to that. So in some ways it was kind of an extension of my career. But we really set out to sort of create Oxford's, best product design company. And we've been fortunate enough to work on literally hundreds of different projects across many industries since then. And what we tried to do is put all that experience into today's session and the series of sessions that follow, and really trying to help you make your ideas happen by taking a sort of design-led approach. Along the way, we've sort of designed this process called opportunity mapping, which will hopefully not only help you understand where you are with your ideas, but also provide a mechanism for exploring new opportunities. And hopefully at the end of the session, you can access the link, which is in the chat, and you can download the template for yourself. And then through a series of workshop webinars over the next few weeks, we can guide you through the whole process from end to end. So hopefully by the end, you'll all be experts. So this is the kind of overview of what to expect during the series. In today's session, I'll give you a little brief introduction about OPD and an overview of the opportunity mapping tool. I'll also be running briefly through a little case study and just whet your appetite about the sorts of challenges we've faced in the past when using this on various projects internally. So today it will be mostly me talking, but in the next 4 workshops we'll be introducing more of a kind of breakout group format so that we can actually work through with each of you in smaller groups some of your sort of individual challenges and considerations in developing your own ideas, because obviously every situation is different. The main structure will be running under the headings of discover and define, design, and then develop and deliver. And as we sort of progress through with our thinking on these things. But I'll tell you more about that process shortly. Incidentally, if you have any feedback or questions or anything, if we run out of time today, please feel free to email us at opportunities@opd.uk.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So, a bit more about OPD. So, hopefully some of you know us. I saw a few familiar faces here, and some of you may even be familiar with our work. But yeah, my wife and I founded OPD back in 2013, and we've grown steadily since then. We're now over 20 staff, a team of experienced designers, engineers, project managers, and makers. And our facility is slap bang in the centre of town in Beaumont Street. And for those of you that know the city, you'll find us next door to the Oxford Playhouse. But what makes us tick? What's our mission? What is our why, if you like? Well, we are driven by making things better. Not only about making, designing and manufacturing better products, but that are better for the planet, but also making lives better. So in some ways, this philosophy kind of underpins everything we do. We want to make things better for our clients. We want to make things better for their customers, better for all of the suppliers, the subcontractors, and the manufacturers involved in getting a product to market. And I guess ultimately making things better for our own staff here at OPD. So you may also ask, well, what makes us different from other product design companies? And my answer would be that I believe that we're more process driven with a more technical approach. And so we call this way of working new product science. You may be familiar with new product development, but we tend to take a more scientific approach. It's not just about developing and designing new products, but also following a sort of thorough process-driven method encompassing, well, the systematic study of the behavior of of the physical world through observation and experimentation. So, I mean, again, that's kind of the definition of science, but we do tend to use powerful tools that we've developed, as well as this opportunity mapping tool. We use simulation, statistical analysis that effectively speed up and de-risk the development process wherever we can. So, although we might not be scientists, we are highly technical and our approach is scientific. So, although there's no such thing as a typical project here at OPD, everything we do is bespoke, but most things do involve one or more of our core services. The discover and design stage is a sort of pre-design stage, and this encompasses research and strategy, where we explore unknowns and deliver, an understanding and clarity in the form of a product requirement specification. This is so important before starting any design work and ensures the whole project is built on a solid foundation. Once we have the PRS, there's then the design stage, which incorporates the creative outputs of industrial design and engineering, where we use our experience and our tools to come up with a vast array of creative solutions that attempt to solve the demanding requirements that we set out in the specification. But ultimately, at this stage, they're only ideas, concepts. And so once you have a design, it then passes to the develop stage, where you prove that that design meets the requirements using simulation, rapid prototyping, and other statistical validation techniques. This whole process is then iterated a number of times to produce the first prototypes, like proof of concept models, alpha prototypes, beta prototypes. And then in turn, we can use that to hone out the various aspects of the design and refine it into a production solution. Finally, we take that solution and we go into the deliver phase. Once the design is proven to meet the requirements, it can be frozen and scaled. So this process is typically about overcoming the challenges of product certification and mass production. Although in the diagram, we show that deliver is showed running right the way through the entire course of what we do, as in our experience, the likelihood of success is massively increased when the first phases of discover and define are done correctly. So before I introduce the tool, I wanted to explain a little bit more about why we developed it. One fact of life in product development is that the cost of change gets more expensive the further through the project you go. It's obvious, really. The cost could be budgetary, cash, but could equally be costly in time or in unforeseen delays. Although the graph in front of you shows a nice smooth curve, in reality, it's not like this. There's steps and bumps. For example, when building prototypes or making tooling, after which the impact of changes can become more difficult and increase massively. So it's super important that you give proper thought to the key aspects of the product as early on in the project as possible, so it can be built on a solid foundation and the number of costly, unforeseen changes can be minimized. So hopefully our opportunity mapping tool will help you with this. The other important philosophy I wanted to introduce in successful product development is recognizing and embracing divergent and convergent phases in projects. For example, at the start of a project, it's important to do the necessary research and discovery. This opens up all kinds of discoveries. And then it's as equally as important to distill thinking and actively reject and hone in the definition phase. Equally, we find that during the design phase of product development, we create massive numbers of ideas, exploring all kinds of features, functions, aesthetics, constructions, and so on, each idea addressing a key requirement or an opportunity in turn. But ultimately, we must size and prioritize these ideas in order to consolidate and combine them into a single viable solution, or prototype in some instances, in order that we can deliver the complete, well-rounded solution. It might sound brutal, but don't be afraid to kill bad ideas. You can't be precious about them. So, without further ado, let me introduce the opportunity mapping tool. We'll be using the opportunity mapping tool as a framework to help you design the journey for your idea through to market, which should in turn help your ideas happen. This is one of many tools that we use at OPD, and this one is particularly useful at helping understand where the opportunities may lie for your idea, and also where you have possible blind spots or areas that you haven't yet identified that are worth considering up front. Just a little comment there that, yes, another reason is that not all ideas are equal. So you really need to, this will hopefully help you prioritize and categorize your ideas and create a hierarchy of ideas. So let me introduce the opportunity mapping tool. Think of the tool as a compass with a series of poles or axes, and I will step you through these one by one. The first pole, if you like, the North Pole, is technology, or I guess for some of you it may be the science. So at OPD, we're really familiar with this axis, as the vast majority of projects we work on involve some kind of new tech. That could be some IP or an internal architecture built from off-the-shelf components that work well together. But occasionally the technology could just be ways of finding a workaround of competitors' patents, or looking at new approaches of how we could cost down a product, or simply making vital improvements to beat the competition. So I suppose if you were to put a scale on this axis, it would probably be technology readiness level, or TRL, with 0 at the base and 9 at the top. On the opposite pole to technology is product. Product can mean a variety of things to different businesses. For some companies, it's a boxed device on a shelf. For others, product can mean a service or even a subscription model. Again, if OPD were to put a scale on the axis, it would probably be phase number or progress through the OPD services diagram that I showed you in the previous slides. As you can imagine, between these two poles really is Oxford Product Design Sweet Spot, our main axis, our north-south poles, if you like. If we were to name this axis between the two poles, we might call it feasibility. And the majority of work we do lies in this line. But experience tells us that there are so many other considerations before we can make a success of this. For example, customer or user. You don't need me to tell you how crucial knowing your customer is to the success of a new innovation. Considering not only who is going to use the product, but how they're going to use it is fundamental. Clearly defining and articulating the want or need, be it new or existing, underpins so many other downstream decisions. In some cases, the customer is not the user, and so it's also worth considering who will buy your idea, as they may have completely different requirements for those who will be using it. And that's often the case in industrial products and medical products for that matter. Actually, I would say that it's actually worth considering all the stakeholders involved in the life of your product, not just the person using it and buying it, but also the person making it, servicing it, selling it, shipping it, installing it, and ultimately disposing of it. The more consideration you can give at this stage, the better your chances of success downstream. Typically, customer research is the conventional way to better understand your customers, but proceed with caution. If you want reliable and worthwhile results, it may be worth partnering with a specialist who has experience in your particular industry. At OPD, one of the tools we use is stakeholder analysis, where we dive deep into the needs of all stakeholders and we map these into clear requirements for the product. We take the must look nice or should be affordable and turn these into quantifiable metrics and build them into the product specification. That way, down the road, when you produce prototypes or run trials, you can measure the success and know if you have succeeded. It also lets you understand where the trade-offs or compromises may lie, as some requirements may be more important than others. So we build must-haves and nice-to-haves into the product specification. The next key consideration is the market in which your innovation lies. Understanding the market in which a product will go into is key to informing your strategy. Understand your competition or other threats, as some may even have the potential to make your market obsolete in the future. In our experience, your go-to-market strategy is key and would typically be laid out in a market plan, which is different from a marketing plan. And in this, you would typically detail your margin structures that underpin the profitability of your innovation. Using the example of slicing bread market, there are many different markets for this, from the domestic bread knife to the Swiss Army penknife, from the electric carving knife to the industrial ultrasonic knife. There are even those commercial slicers that will slice a whole loaf in one go. And who knows, in the future, there may even be laser-guided bread knives. My point is that each solution is a different product that uses a different technology that appeals to different customers in different markets, but they all slice bread. So as you can see, all of the points of the compass begin to interact and to give a very different outcome. The next point on the compass I wanted to discuss was ecosystem. Be that regulations, standards, certification, compliance, environment, or even environmental, it is vital that this is explored at the outset, as it can really trip you up later. You want to ensure your product is designed to be compliant from the outset and that your to-market strategy takes this into account. It can be costly from both a time and cost perspective, having to rework and recertify products after the design is frozen. Also, some markets can be prohibitive to enter, and so it's really important to understand any established norms for new innovations into existing markets that you may not be familiar with. Also, any new legislation that may impact you coming through. Like recently, we've seen the implementation of a UK CA mark that's taking over from the European CE marking after Brexit. There's also a new one, which is the EU's legislation on the right to repair legislation, which is a lot of companies are sort of struggling to implement at the moment. I think it's also worth adding that with the strong push towards sustainability and carbon neutral business models, it can be a minefield in an ever-changing world. And so the sooner these factors can be considered, the better. You may not only want to consider the materials that the product's made from, but also the fuel miles, the packaging, maybe considering rework and how long you may need to support the products and stock spares for. I would always recommend you over-test your product to destruction so you can understand any weak links and quick fixes that you can make to make your product more reliable. A lot of these considerations will likely form the basis of your decision for how long a warranty to offer with your product. Again, there are regulatory specialists that can help guide you through the process and help you plan for success. Next is brand. So if you think about it, the word actually originates from the marking of something with a hot iron to create ownership, typically cattle. But now it's more about creating recognition and differentiation, benefits and emotion, and gives people the perception of assurance about what they are buying. Just looking at the examples here, you can see some very strong but very different brands. Rolls-Royce have built a very valuable brand that shows the power a brand can have in creating a very high value product through the perception of their luxury and reliability built on heritage. The Harley-Davidson is another good one, as it's built on heritage, but shows how a brand can create an almost evangelical loyalty, love, and devotion. The example here being that people are willing to tattoo or brand themselves with the Harley-Davidson brand. But strong brands rarely happen by accident. Companies spend enormous sums of money on developing, fine-tuning, and enforcing their brands. Some even hire teams of people who go out to points of sale, ensuring that the presentation of their products and the positioning on the shelves is consistent with their brand guidelines. In our experience, agreeing a number of key aspects or pillars of your brand and the values that it represents early on means that this can be integrated into your complete offering and embodied into the final product in a consistent way wherever possible. As you can see, the brand axis sits across from the customer on the compass. And we would maybe define this axis as desirability, if you like. So you can do a lot to craft a brand perception that aims to describe the benefits that you have already identified previously as the needs of your customers and your users. But my advice would be with brands to keep it simple. Distilling a brand down to its very essence is a real art. And also don't confuse the brand of your first product with the brand for your company. The two may end up being quite different. Next is business model. Excuse me. So considerations about the business model can change things dramatically. For example, are you going to sell it directly or through a distributor? Maybe you won't even sell it at all. Maybe you're looking to license the technology or the IP. Or maybe the project is part of a consortium or a joint venture with another company or your manufacturing partner. Admittedly, some of these things may only become obvious as you move forwards with the project. But equally, understanding areas such as the revenue stream and the return on the investment can make sure you're cutting your design to fit your cloth from the start. Also, in fairness, business model may not be so relevant to some of you. So you can interchange this with key milestone or next goal. For example, some companies we work with are simply focused on unlocking the next funding pot, be that grant funding, academic budgets, investment funding, or even a crowdfunding target. It all depends on the idea you're working on, and this can dramatically change the strategy on which that needs to be done. business models must keep up with an ever-changing market, so are rarely set in stone. And that is why it sits across on our compass from market, as they are inextricably linked and together can define the viability of an idea. An interesting example is inkjet printing, where we've known for a long time that companies make little profit on the printers that they sell, but instead make profit from the ink cartridges. But now there's a change in that market. And rather than selling printers and ink cartridges, there's a move towards a new business model where you effectively get the printer for free and subscribe to paying a monthly fee to print a certain number of pages. The cartridges just turn up when the others are close to running out. So it is possible to completely invent new business models, but also in established markets, many players are evolving their business models at the same time. The next and final axis on the compass is organization or business or company. So what type of organization do you need to build around your idea? Or what is the existing organization that your new idea needs to work within? Do you need any specialists, maybe to implement some other axes that we spoke about earlier? Can you outsource aspects of the project, maybe even license the idea? Could you set up a virtual business, or maybe you want to spin it out so you can attract SCIS funding? In truth, this might not be something you'll necessarily know upfront, but considering the options might influence some of your decision-making down the line. All axes of the compass are interdependent. And if we were to name this one between organization and ecosystem, it might be called sustainability. Not just from an ecological perspective, but ensuring your business is robust and sustainable for the long term. It's perfectly normal for entrepreneurs and inventors to focus on the areas where they have the most experience, their comfort zones, and you don't know what you don't know at the end of the day. So hopefully you can see now that by investing the time to go through the process of creating an opportunity map, it can help highlight any weaknesses or vulnerabilities, turn unknown unknowns into known unknowns, if you will, making you more resilient and better prepared. In the early stages of an opportunity, it can be helpful for identifying some of the important roles and responsibilities or skills that you might need to get your product to market. But this is just the start. Once you've mapped everything out, you can then start to use the compass to unlock new opportunities. You can effectively use the scales on the sliders as variables and run various what-if scenarios and explore new ideas that you may not have otherwise thought of. This is something we'll be talking through with you in later sessions and showing you how to do that. So yeah, I guess there's many examples of successful companies doing this, like, for example, Harry's Razors. In a market where Gillette had dominated for so many years, they found a new way into the market by creating a unique offering, a subscription razor that they have now expanded to include all the shaving creams and lotions. And I think they're even doing skincare and shower and hair now. So they've innovated in their business model. But it has affected other aspects of, in terms of their brand and how their organization is set up, because I think most of their sales are actually direct sales. Another example could be, again, using Rolls-Royce, but this time Rolls-Royce jet engines. They no longer sell jet engines. They sell uptime or power by the hour. So basically, they do, you rent the engines for the amount of time that the jet engine is in the air, and they do all of the preventative maintenance. They're monitoring the engines. They make sure the parts are shipped ready to the airport, for when it arrives. And it's basically provides this kind of preventative, proactive business model that gives their customers the confidence, obviously, to purchase their engines. I was going to run through now OPD case study. So in parallel with the coming webinars, we wanted to walk you through real life examples to show what the opportunity mapping tool looks like in practice. We'll be using the example of one of our own products called Easy Assist, which is in the final stages of development and due to launch at the end of Q1 next year. So, did you know that over 43% of homeowners would not know how to turn off their gas supply in an emergency? Or that a further 2 million gas customers would simply not be able to switch off their gas supply, even if given clear instructions over the phone? This could be because of a disability or even a language barrier. Let me introduce Easy Assist, a product designed by OPD for vulnerable gas customers by helping them easily turn off their gas supply in an emergency. We developed this in partnership with Cadent Gas, one of the companies responsible for maintaining the gas network and getting gas to your home. Easy Assist is, in essence, an emergency stop button for your domestic gas supply. But it didn't always look like this. Let me rewind the clock back to when OPD first got involved in the project as a response to a call for innovation from the gas networks. They had produced a brief outlining the basic requirements for the product that made it very straightforward for almost anyone to turn off the gas. We learned later that actually many of the existing valve suppliers had simply suggested a longer handle, and this was what resulted in the call for innovation. Our response? Well, we responded with this concept, a clockwork mechanism that could drive closed the valve if the button was pressed, and a large cover that provided very clear indication of the status of the gas supply. So if we map this onto our opportunity compass, we can see that at the very start of the project, we were reasonably confident in our technology. It was a quite low risk design, and we were reasonably confident it could be made to work. From a product perspective, there was also some details to overcome, but again, our vision was a low risk approach, and we were confident in the end product could be made similar to this concept. Even at this stage, we were able to create cost estimates for tooling and bills of materials, as well as very detailed and fully costed project delivery plan, all the way through to mass manufacture. Thankfully, this concept won us the project as it addressed all of the requirements as we knew them, and we were selected as Cadent's partner to take the idea to market. However, it was during the initial meetings when wider stakeholders were brought into the project and we were reviewing the requirements that we began to realize that the specification and the call for innovation needed to be revisited. We also identified several opportunities for innovation, but we'll talk about those more in a future session. Obviously, we hadn't given any consideration to the brand at this stage. The product was intended to be sold through the gas distribution network. So while the product had an end user, it would never be sold directly to them. Initially, it appeared that the customers and users were further along the axis because our initial concept met all of the requirements that Cadent Gas had given us in the call for innovation. But it was only when we started to create the process of building a robust specification and met the wider stakeholders. As we started to speak to these people, the gas engineers who would be installing the product, the safeguarding team who were responsible for customer safety, and the call center team who assisted the customers firsthand, it became clear to us that there were other requirements that hadn't been put into the original brief. So even though at the outset it appeared we had a halfway along the axis, when we started digging more deeply, it became clear that we had a long way to go. As you would expect, the other 4 points of the compass were also at a fairly low stages of development and understanding, which is perfectly normal. We knew that the gas industry was heavily regulated, but ours was a new category of product with little or no precedence. So from an ecosystem perspective, it wasn't immediately obvious what standards were even relevant. So we knew we had a lot of work to do to ensure that we could be compliant with the necessary regulations, but we were only at the beginning of the journey. So at that point, it was a known unknown, but we knew it had the potential to radically change the product, the design, and the materials we used. We also knew that Cadent understood their part of the market, but we didn't know much about the wider opportunities for the product that existed, both nationally and internationally. The business model was based on our initial concept, but had since developed into something completely different. And frankly, the organisation wasn't even a consideration at this point, as we were developing it through Oxford Product Design. In some ways, we were quite naive about some of these aspects, but because of our experience of product development in other sectors and industries, we're able to challenge these norms, ultimately, that led to new innovations and improved the product significantly. So if we took a snapshot, a heat map, if you like, of where the product looked like at the start of the discover and define phase, it would be a very long and thin. Strong in technology, strong in product, but weaker in our knowledge about the other important aspects. To be honest, this is a fairly common shape of technology-based ideas, where the technology and the product have been identified and developed, but less work has been done on the opportunities and how these fit within the wider picture. In later sessions, we can talk you through the project in more detail, and we can look at how we went from what you see here to a finished product where the opportunity map looks more like a ring. As we move through the webinars, we'll explore the different phases of the development pathway in more detail. We'll look at how, during the process, we need to push all of the points of the compass outwards to create an ever-increasing ring of confidence. We've created a workbook for you to download from our website. The link is in the chat. It will be in the slides that will circulate afterwards. And in the first session of Discover and Define, on the 25th of November, we'll use a mixture of presentations and breakout groups to make sure that the sessions are as interactive and as useful as they possibly can be. So all that remains is for me really is to thank you very much for your time today. How are we doing on time?
Nearly 37 minutes.
Great. So I guess that leaves a little bit of time for some questions. You can see here the link to the download mapping tool, and also if you have any questions after the session, by all means send us an email on the email address there. So thanks again, and look forward to our next session.
Thank you very much, Rupert. I thought that was excellent. And I mean, can I just ask a quick couple of questions which might help people with clarification? So just to emphasize to everybody, don't be tempted to think that you can avoid attending the webinars and just listen to the recordings afterwards. We want these to be participative. So you'll get the most value if you can commit to all of them, basically. And I think as a free of charge offer, it's a fantastic opportunity here to work through practically some of these aspects of your product and your service development with a team of people that have done it probably hundreds of times. I think that's the big difference for me, is that if I was to embark on this sort of thing, I'd be doing it for the first time. My product is my baby, but these guys have seen lots of babies and helped them grow. So please do come along to as many of the sessions as you can to actively participate. They'll be about an hour and a half long, so it's not massive commitment, and we'd like to see as many of you as much of the time as possible. The other thing I just wanted to sort of comment on is that there are lots of tools out there, but working through a tool by yourself is actually quite a difficult thing to do. So if you can do it with your peers, with your colleagues in your company, or facilitated by people like OPD that have developed it and been through the process a number of times themselves, it's going to be massively more impactful. So that's what we've got on offer for you. I think Rupert's done a brilliant job in setting the scene, and thank you again for standing in for other colleagues. We're all already getting we're all getting a couple of positive comments on the chat, but what I'm going to offer in the few minutes that we've got, if anybody would like to switch on their camera and unmute themselves, then at the risk of either loads of people or nobody responding. Would anybody like to do that, to take the chance to ask a quick question? I'm just going to kick off with a question. Perhaps people could think about. Oh, we've got one from Ran. Do you want to unmute yourself, Ran? We can't hear you, unfortunately. I can't hear you. Rupert, can you hear Ran?
I can't hear Ran either.
No.
It's a good question as well. I just had a feeling. Maybe you could write it in the chat.
Yeah, write it in the chat.
Looks like Tim's popped his hand up as well in the meantime, while Ran's trying to...
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Tim.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, say again.
Go for it. Ask your question.
Okay. Right. Less of a question as such, more thank you very much, Rupert, for a really good intro session to the opportunity map and everything else. As you said, there are so many unknown unknowns going through this process, and I've spent the last 15 years in the tech industry, in the security industry rather, designing tracking systems for vehicles, and I'm now looking at designing my own products to make the world a safer place. And so the technology side is, as your example showed, fairly sorted, but there are many areas surrounding the potential applications for things like blockchain, for AI, for actual reality. And I wondered, do you have, I realize there aren't any shortcuts to this and it's just a case of plugging away with different people, but do you have any knowledge in those areas, or do you have any good starting points to work out how to identify where the good applications are for those technologies rather than them just being buzzwords?
I see. So more about trying to, you have this technology, where could it possibly be used to greatest effect?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite interesting. I mean, we've been involved in some projects like that, even before that state, where, for example, somebody has a factory that's making something and they've come to us and said, I want to diversify my offering. We're really good at doing this. What else could we make? That could sort of, diversify our income. So I suppose for me, it's some of those things would be great to kind of sit down and really start brainstorming some opportunities there, really start understanding, because I guess that there's some ways in which you can tune or tweak your technology so it's better suited to other ways, or it might define your next steps. But yeah, I suppose in later sessions, when we start really mapping the opportunity out, the idea is that then we can start basically adjusting and sliding and running different scenarios. So what if scenarios? So I'd say there's definitely value in building the opportunity map, so that we then have the basis later on for how to then sort of look at it through different lenses. But in terms of markets and stuff, yeah, that's a bit more tricky, because I think that probably will take a bit more research, if you like.
No, that's good. It's yeah, like you say, explore it in later sessions, and it is one of those things where it just needs quite a bit of thought and stepping through things to get things moved on.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if there's anything specific like that you want to chat about, I'll be happy to have a talk about it between sessions, and we can maybe sort of go a bit deeper on it. Maybe get an NDA in place or something, and I can help you a bit more specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think it's likely to be a feature of each of the sessions that you may individually find something that you've got to go and explore, or find a way to explore, but hopefully the session will give you some tools and some thoughts about how to do that. And I know that kind of, I mean, quite a few of my clients have been working with OPD or other teams. I should say that probably other teams are available in theory. But working with a team like OPD's in a brainstorming session is incredibly powerful. you come away with a massive amount of knowledge and probably quite a lot of homework to do as well, though. So Ran,
it's a lot of fun as well, I find. Yeah. So Ran, I can see your question there.
I think you can hear me now. Hopefully,
we can.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. First, I said thank you that you couldn't hear, but thank you again. But yeah, basically, from my perspective, I built an app last year and I launched it on the App Store, and I haven't done any marketing on it because I'm trying to learn the market. I'm trying to understand. At the end of the day, it needs to be a profitable business. So, because initially what I designed was for users, it's not necessarily gonna give me any income because I don't charge anything for the app. But you know, looking ahead from a business point of view, understanding and trying to explore different avenues, how to monetize an idea, because that's what it. I mean, unless you're doing it out of ideology, which is great. If you want to do it as your career, you need to make a profit from it somehow. So yeah, in the next few sessions, that's kind of what I'd be focusing on, trying to get some more advice on.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really interesting point, to be honest, because apps are quite tricky to make viable, to be honest, with the numbers of apps there are and the number of people working on app development at the moment. But I think I still believe that the opportunity map is quite a valuable process. It just might be that maybe some of the axes or some of the terminology just might be a little bit different. So you might want to tweak some of that so it's more kind of for the app industry, if you like, common terms. But I think again, the idea is that you kind of map what you currently have, and then the idea is about how you then use that to not only identify weaknesses and opportunities, but how you can then run different scenarios and start saying, okay, well, because I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge about how others have made apps viable through different models, and it's obviously the advertising and the pay-per-click and the freemium and whatever. There's all these different models, and we have the opportunity map. You can run some different scenarios and make sure that whatever you decide to do really ties in with your customer, the market, the opportunity, your competition, and your whatever decisions you make are considering the sort of wider picture.
Cool. Cheers for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ran. And I'm really pleased you raised that, because as people might expect, we do see an awful lot of apps coming through. And I would venture to suggest that quite a lot of them don't appear to have spent a huge amount of time at the discover and define stage before they've been happily building. And so I'm not suggesting you've done that, Ran, but I mean, Rupert, in general, do you think, not just with apps, but with other products, do people really spend enough time at define and discover? Is there a tendency?
No, not even some of the global multinationals we work with do. I mean, you have to draw, you can't just spend forever on it, but we do find it's really valuable, because doing the right thing right first time and building it with a strategy from the start is, it doesn't necessarily take that much longer. So anytime you invest at the start can save you so much time downstream. Giving it proper rounded thought, knowing what you don't know, finding out what you don't know. Again, it doesn't all have to be sorted on day one, but at least figuring out what those blind spots are and coming up with some ideas, doing some research. There's so many good books and good like YouTube videos and stuff with kind of some philosophies in each of the areas we've kind of spoken about today. But yeah, I mean, there comes a point where you need to draw a line and say, that's enough, we've done enough, because things do evolve throughout the project. It's really just a kind of flag in the sand, if you know what I mean, to start from. But yeah, it's definitely worth doing some. More is better.
Yeah, and I presume the whole thing, although you've presented it sort of, the opportunity map is brilliant, because it's a map, it's non-linear, if you like, but the journey is sometimes thought of as being as a bit linear, but it's not, is it? It's an iterative process, and if you know, people will go backwards, finding all sorts of ways to increase their knowledge of customers, for example.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was keen to highlight the kind of divergent, convergent thinking, because you need to embrace that. It's not about a big funnel where you just converge to a final solution. You really need to allow yourself to consider lots of possibilities, then actively, you know, consolidate and refine them, you know.
Final question from me, and I'm abusing my privilege, I suppose, by asking these questions, but just for clarity as well, the gas mains tap example, will you
Yes.
be using that? Did you understand you'll be using that throughout the series?
Yeah, so because it's effectively one of our own projects, we have a huge amount of information that we've done, and it's been an incredible journey for us. So we're going to run that as a bit of a theme. So I wanted to start by kind of highlighting that, you know, even when we started, there was some room for improvement there, and it was about, but now what we have is a pretty robust solution that we're excited about launching next year. So it's going to run along in parallel through the different phases of, design, develop, deliver.
That's brilliant, because I think some people may have had the concern that we'd be talking about very high tech products all the time, and we're not. There's some technology in that, but it's not beyond the comprehension of most. Yeah, brilliant.
It's a clockwork product, really, at the end of the day. But there were some challenges around the website, the brand, the market, the business model, the packaging, the environmental considerations. There were lots of really, quite sort of useful examples that we could use as using that as a project. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, look, I'm going to suggest that we draw the meeting to a close. I'm going to encourage everybody to put the 25th of November and the other dates in your diaries for the first session, and then the other ones are roughly 2 weeks apart. I hope we might meet some of you at Oxlep's marketplace event, and I think OPD are going to be there as well. So that's on the 18th, and it would be, if you want to find out more about that, you can do that there. Thank you everybody for attending today, and thanks for the questions at the end. There aren't any more questions on the chat, so I just wanted to thank Rupert for stepping in once again, and to your colleagues and the rest of the OPD team for putting this together. And we're really looking forward to the subsequent 4 sessions. I hope everybody else is too.
Great. Well, me too, and thanks for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thanks, Rupert. Everybody can sign off. The recording will be made available, tops and tails, and please do let other colleagues know about this opportunity. Thanks for attending today.
So much. Okay, bye. Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.